thank you again for participating on that small questionnaire. Actually, we're now going to start the webinar. I advise you to still stick to the menti.com website, as we're actually going to go and see the results, just to have an idea of who we have today. So thank you very much all for participating in this webinar. My name is Stephen, as I mentioned to you before. And today we're going to be talking about the Eic Accelerator and specifically how to apply for the Eic Accelerator. Just a bit of housekeeping before we start. As I mentioned to you, it would be best to keep your microphones muted at all times. This would ensure that the presentation and the webinar will go as smoothly as possible. Secondly, of course, as this is the webinar under the term that we have coined ourselves, the Webinar Wednesdays, it is not the only webinar we have this month. As you can see from the calendar, we have another one coming up in a week's time, consortium building, and the week after we're going to have another one on the running of a Horizon 2020 project. So we advise you please to have a look at our Facebook page, to subscribe to our newsletter. That's on mcst.gov.mt. We have a lot of interesting webinars, and you can also look at the previous webinars that we organized. We started doing this webinar session from a couple of months now. Of course, due to the COVID crisis, we've changed a bit of our strategy of outreach. However, we do intend to continue with these webinars, and of course, feel free to look at our previous webinars. They're all on our website. If you have any information, just feel free to ask us any questions. There is a question box within the WebEx chat, which you can use. So feel free to use the WebEx chat. If you have any questions, we will have time for questions and answers. And yes, we will be recording this webinar as well. So all of the material that you will find, including the slides, will be uploaded, as well as the recording of the webinar. So on that note, I'm very happy to start, and I will myself start off by going onto the Menti website. So I know that all of you have contributed, so we're going to have a quick look, and I'm going to pull this out just for everyone to see. So just a second as we start. So the first question that I just answered, it was just interesting to know, have you heard of the Eic Accelerator before? So let me see if we have any responses. Oh, we don't actually. I don't see anyone that has actually contributed, so not so sure. Well, if you haven't heard of the Eic Accelerator before, I guess this is the right time and the right presentation to do so. I don't know if anyone had any issues trying to access the website. If you did, just kindly let me know. We just had this question, another question, but definitely this webinar is for those who have not heard of the Eic Accelerator before and how this contributes to specifically the SMEs here in Malta. We also have a second question, which is here. Correct. The answer is indeed we have disbursed more than 2.5 million euros to SMEs through the SME instrument since 2014. So yes, this has been quite a popular and successful in certain ways for the Maltese beneficiaries here. And today we're actually going to go into the SMEs and the Eic Accelerator, which is now the new Eic Accelerator. Well, yes, now we have questions here. That, of course. So very good. It means that people are very understanding about this, that indeed, that of course, a lot of companies have benefited from this. So I'm going to go straight into the presentation, and I'm going to show you a bit of what we have today for us. So hang on a second. I share. So, perfect. So today we're going to have a brief overview of the EIC Accelerator. We obviously, some of you may or may not know about the Eic Accelerator, so we will be going through that. We will go through the templates and the guides of the Eic Accelerator, so what information is available for the Eic Accelerator, and then we'll go down to the nitty-gritty of things with the actual application of the Eic Accelerator. And so towards the end of the session, we will be joined by Ms. Angelle Giuliano from Across Limits. She is an actual EIC jury member, and for those of you who are interested in applying and want to get some feedback from previous or from the evaluators, this is an excellent opportunity to listen in from an evaluator and actually see the best way of actually approaching this. So again, we'll start from the very beginning. The Eic Accelerator obviously falls under Horizon 2020 Europe. It recently started, well, from another program, a similar program called the SME Instrument from 2014, and it was later renamed and remodeled early last year. And obviously goes under the Horizon 2020 funding instrument. It is quite an interesting instrument that is similar, but at the same time quite different to a lot of the funding instruments under Horizon 2020. And therefore, it is quite a good opportunity, particularly for SMEs. And speaking of SMEs, we have an interesting video that we'd like to show you. A lot of the times, we don't really have a good indication of how SMEs have participated under the Horizon Framework Program. And we have a nice little video to show you, which will explain how SMEs in Malta have participated, not just through the SME instrument and the Eic Accelerator, but through other funding programs of Horizon 2020.
You an SME or large company involved in research and innovation? Do you need funding in order to develop an innovative technology?
Oops, sorry.
The industrial leadership pillar to speed up development of the technologies and innovations that will underpin tomorrow's businesses and help innovative European SMEs to grow into world-leading companies. It consists of three specific objectives. Leadership in enabling and industrial technology provides dedicated support for research, development and demonstration, and, where appropriate, for standardization and certification on information and communications technology, nanotechnology, advanced materials, biotechnology, advanced manufacturing and processing in space. Access to risk finance aims to overcome deficits in the availability of debt and equity finance for R&D and innovation-driven companies and projects at all stages of development. Innovation in SMEs provides SME-tailored support to stimulate all forms of innovation in SMEs, targeting those with the potential to grow and internationalize across the single market and beyond. Maltese researchers have successfully participated in projects funded under this pillar.
We are currently involved in a €4 million European project, Horizon 2020, is a research innovation action. The title of the project is Prime VR2, and its scope is to develop a bespoke controller which can be used by various patients in a virtual reality serious game environment. The main purpose is to develop a platform in which patients with strokes, sports injured patients, as well as children with dystonia can rehab themselves using this controller. The project in fact involves 4 universities, 6 SMEs, and also a number of what we are calling living labs who will be using at the end the technology. And therefore, through this project, our aim is to, apart from achieve the required research results, to network and expand our portfolio of collaborators.
So in 2016, Leadership Inspire, a project conducted by Inbound News Limited, was successfully funded by SME Instrument Phase 1, the Horizon 2020 scheme. whereby we successfully performed a feasibility study, which served both for commercial and technological feasibility that enabled us to create a product that is now in the market, being used by iGaming, restaurants, and hotels locally as well as abroad. The product itself is a advertising optimization engine powered by artificial intelligence. SMA Instrument Phase 1 was the perfect entry point for our company to conduct such an R&D intensive project because of the commercial risk involved in a high-intensity project such as this one. Luckily, we found the support from the EU fund that allows us to make sure that what we're building is going to be well received in the market. And luckily,
Horizon 2020 is the EU framework program for research and innovation. Get in touch with your national contact point at the Malta Council for Science and Technology for further information and assistance.
Great. So that was indeed a presentation. We'll just go back to where we were. Oops, what happened here? I don't know what's happening. Hang on a second, sorry. I'm not going to start again, please. So that was a presentation on the SME instruments and the SMEs that have participated in Malta under the Horizon 2020 program. Just interestingly, from the last interview that we showed through the video, the actual candidate was an SME instrument candidate, which is part or used to be part of the Eic Accelerator, and is now currently under the new Eic Accelerator. So yes, Dashin was a project that was funded through the program and was very successful in sort of jump-starting its operations and to then scale up its operations. So very interesting and very good participation from Maltese beneficiaries. Let me go straight into a very general understanding of the Eic Accelerator. So currently the Eic Accelerator is divided under the Pathfinder Pilot and the Accelerator Pilot. So today we'll be talking about the Accelerator Pilot specifically, which is the SME Instrument Phase 2, or what used to be known as the SME Instrument Phase 2. So of course, there's quite a lot of money that has been allocated, and for the future years and even under Horizon Europe, the Accelerator Pilot will continue as the Accelerator. So what is the Accelerator Pilot? Basically, it is a bottom-up fund providing financial assistance and also services to companies, to businesses, specifically innovators and innovative companies with grants and equity finance. It is a very straightforward funding instrument in a sense that for those that have that are companies, that are startups, they have the access and the opportunity to access funding for their idea or project. So that is really, in a nutshell, what it is. This year, or starting from last year, from the end of last year, the Accelerator Pilot was launched, which specifically introduced the concept of equity finance towards companies, bringing up the possibility of getting financing for each company to up to 17.5 million euros. And the accelerator is targeted at those companies that are at their late stage of innovation and that are ready to scale up their activities in Europe and also abroad. So the kind of the profile that you have from the SMEs are the high potential, high growth SMEs. So again, as I was mentioning to you, it's all bottom up. All sectors are included and are eligible to apply. So if you are a biotech company, if you are a fintech company, if you have any innovation in other sectors particularly in the field and in the view of the Green Deal, if you are in sustainability, transport, all sectors are covered. The grant, as I mentioned to you, goes up to 2.5 million euros. The grant is there primarily to fund the R&D costs of the project and to better improve and mature the product or service that you have. The funding rate is around 70%. The equity is the additional and new novel part of the accelerator, which in addition to the 2.5 million euros, provides applicants with the opportunity to receive equity finance of up to 15 million euros. What does it mean by equity investment? The equity part is new and it's extremely interesting, especially for Maltese SMEs, particularly in view of the fact that venture capital or private investors at Malta are few and far in between. We don't really have a notion and concept of angel investors or venture capitalists. So this is an excellent opportunity for Maltese SMEs to potentially use this facility being provided by the European Commission. And the equity actually comes in the form of convertible loans. Just technical term here. Convertible loans are basically shares that do not dilute the value of the company. Therefore, the equity that is being invested does not devalue the company in any way. Who are the investors? Well, primarily the European Commission is the investor through the EIB. They actually set up a fund called the Eic Fund. And through the Eic Fund, they provide equity finance to companies which they believe are very promising. And given that it is the European Commission, they have a very passive role in the daily management of the company. So even though they have shares in the company, they do not have any active role in the company. So that's very positive for anyone who would like equity finance but doesn't want to have the strict rules and regulations of other, let's say, private investors. And of course, the European Commission normally would then also value the company and its shares, and it might be that the exit strategy could be carried out for the company, and therefore shares are sold. Moving on, the European Innovation Council is interestingly very popular. So recently, and it's very adaptable. So the EIC is really one of the primary instruments in Horizon 2020 and was used also recently in fighting against COVID-19. An additional 150 million euros were allocated in the last cutoff round in March. We actually had about a couple of applicants from Malta as well who applied. And we received quite a number of proposals also from the rest of Europe as well. So just to show that, the competition is quite tough, less to say, it is very, very competitive, as of course you're fighting against the best of Europe. So it is really the creme of the creme. And of course, the funding though is a very attractive option for a lot of SMEs. So nearly around 70 or so, depending on, of course, the number of applications, you would get around 70 to 80 companies being funded each round. So it's not too bad. And again, we've had Maltese companies being funded under this as well. I'm going to go through the Icy Accelerator proposal. Now, for those of you that may not know, the Eic Accelerator has two parts. Today we're going through the first part, which is the actual proposal itself. Just to inform you that, of course, the accelerator, after having applied and after having successfully passed the first stage of evaluation, applicants are actually invited to pitch in front of a jury. So the Angelle will be obviously giving some feedback and advice on both the pitching, but also on the general applicants of the Eic Accelerator. But just to let you know that the Eic Accelerator also entails having the participants having to pitch in front of a jury. So first of all, steps to apply. So let's take, for the example for today, unfortunately the Menti didn't really work on the first slide, how to participate. Very interestingly, this is, well, quite simple, but not for those who have not ever applied before. Before you apply, the first thing to do is to register your profile, personal profile. You see the arrow there on the right-hand side. The second thing to do is, of course, to register your company. And there's a participant register there where you would be taken through the SME wizard. So they will ask a couple of questions about your company, and basically they will give you what is called a PIC number. So the PIC number is essentially your identifier for your company. And essentially once your SME gets validated, you can then start applying to the Eic Accelerator. So you see there, I've just made a screenshot. Alongside that are the templates. I will be going through this maybe towards the end of my presentation. There are links to the templates, basically the instruments, SME instruments, phase 2 templates are all online, so you can actually have a look at them, try and look at the questions, and start working on the proposal, basically before actually applying online. Of course, the system is all done online. And last but not least, or at least second to last to not least, is the template guide. So what I will be using today is obviously tips and tricks to make a really good EIC application. And a lot of the information is out there, it's public. I have given a link as well to the guide, which I have provided in the slides, and you will have access to all the links as well. And basically the Access to EIC is just a project within Horizon that has developed just a guide for any interested applicants to apply to the program. So I'm getting all the information from here. They're a very good group of people, very well versed in the Eic Accelerator. So please feel free to look at that, but I will go through the guide today. And of course, everything will be sourced from here. Last but not least, of course, the last thing are the guidelines for applicants and the frequently asked questions. There are other additional material which you can get as well. Just FAQs and a simple guideline. So we will go through those as well very briefly. We're not going to go through the actual document, don't worry. We're actually just we've just extracted the most important information and presented it in this webinar today. First of all, the proposal itself. So having downloaded all the documents, you've already registered, you've already got an understanding of the Eic Accelerator, is the submission of your proposal. So part A is the administrative data. Here you will need to just, of course, insert information about your company. The date was, for example, the formation of the company, when it was formed. You will be inserting very briefly an outline of the budget for the proposal. You will have some also questions related to ethics. And then the last two, which I want to focus on, which are keyword selection and consent for equity. So the keyword selection is interesting because this essentially however you select your keywords will obviously impact how your proposal will be evaluated and who will evaluate your proposal. So selecting keywords here is very essential. So take, for example, that you are an ICT company, or you're a software company, but you're working in healthcare. You obviously choose keywords related to the fact that you are working in ICT and that you're doing healthcare as well. The maximum amount of keywords you can select, I mean, there's a whole list that you can go through, is around 3 keywords. So choose them wisely because they're very important, as that will impact your evaluation. Another thing I want to take into consideration, I mentioned equity. Now, the equity is technically optional. You are not requested to propose or request equity. However, it is highly, let me stress this out, it's highly suggested that you actually give consent to the evaluation committee to convert part of your budget into equity as well. Now, the equity is there primarily as a tool to propel and to scale up your project to the market. So generally speaking, when developing even the project proposal and the budget, the equity part is actually used primarily for the later stages of the project. So once the technology readiness level, the maturity is more mature, the equity is used to scale up. Generally speaking, if you're not ticking that box, it really shows that maybe you're not really interested to scale up. So our recommendation here is generally to tick that box, even though you might not get the equity, you might just get a grant for your R&D part. But if you do request equity, it just shows that you're ready to really scale up. That's not to say that, of course, that you should always request equity, but if you believe that you have a project that is ready to go on the market, then I think it would be the best thing to do. And now we will go through part B. So I've just had a very brief overview of part A. Part B is literally the technical aspect of the proposal, which I will go through right now, which basically is the following: the sections on excellence, impact, and implementation. Some of you who have already applied to Horizon 2020 programs have already maybe seen these sections. For the SME, or at least for the Eic Accelerator, the same applies, but the evaluation and the criteria is actually a bit different. So that's what we will go through now. And of course, within the technical part, we have the ethics, CVs, and other supporting documents, and it will explain why, the financial and corporate information. And last but not least, stressing this as well, is the pitch deck. Please, you cannot apply to the Eic Accelerator without having a pitch deck. The pitch deck can be done in any form. It is up to you how you decide how you pitch your product. But basically, it just comes to show that the companies that apply are the ones that really have already a product and the idea in mind. As I was mentioning prior, that the minimum also requirements to apply here is a technology readiness level 5. So basically, you need to have some sort of a prototype ready, and basically some sort of use of the product or service. And this is very important in applying to the Eic Accelerator. So, if there are any questions, please put them in the chat box. I will have a look at them later and see whether or not there are any questions. If you do have any questions, please feel free to use the chat box. I will now go through the section on the excellence, impact, and implementation. This is just an overview. So as everyone knows, the excellence is one of the most, well, all three parts are very important, of course. It's the part of the proposal which demonstrates the innovation. So this comes down to whatever you have within the EIC or within your project is what kind of potential innovation you have. The product service model generally is already at an advanced stage of development. As I just mentioned to you, the technology readiness level is pretty high, between 5, at least a minimum of 5 or 6. And here the evaluation criteria is about 33%. So actually you will see in all of the 3 sections here that they're all evaluated equally, which is very interesting here as well compared to maybe other Horizon 2020 funding programs. So excellence is quite straightforward. I will go into excellence right now very soon, is how we demonstrate the innovation potential. And it's what I've stressed here is that it goes beyond the state of the art. And it is already at an advanced stage of development. The impact. Now, generally the impact is of course, in other Horizon 2020 projects, there are a lot of factors with regards to how you can define impact. In this case, it's slightly more straightforward. Here, really, it's about the demand for the product, the service, or the model, and the scale-up potential. So really, the impact is that my product or service has the potential to grow and the potential to increase demand from the market. So this, again, is also evaluated at a 33% weighting. Last but not least, there's the implementation side. Having a great idea but not having a good foundation obviously is potentially a very damaging thing for your company. And for the proposal and for the evaluator, it is extremely important to see that you have a very good team to support your idea. So here it's about how you're going to manage it, who is on the team, and proving that your company, your idea is technically non-bankable. And we'll go through the terminology of non-bankable in the later stage. Warning here is that sections 1 to 3, so excellence impact implementation, is limited to 30 pages in total. So please do not go over the 30 pages. If I were to sort of sum up these three areas and three sections and basically referring them to how applicants would approach this proposal, which is basically one of the most important parts, you're basically writing a business plan, or you are basically writing your business plan here. So it is assumed that you already have a business plan, that you've already carried out your feasibility studies, etc. You're technically writing your business plan here. So please take that into consideration, as this is very important for the evaluation. So let's jump straight into it. So once we are in the introduction, this is just basically, let's put it this way, the executive summary of your proposal. So here we're really introducing our project. So the tips here are very simple. We just try and keep it short. We're just highlighting the achievements, identifying what is the problem, solution, and the opportunity. What is your value proposition, and understanding the capital needs. So here, basically, the most important thing, and I think it's quite simple to understand, is the tip I put there below is actually a very good way to structure it, which is identifying the problem. What is currently the status quo? What is the issue currently today? Is it, for example, there is a lack, we'll take the COVID-19 crisis as an example. The problem is that social distancing is very difficult to maintain. A solution to this problem could be inventing a platform or an application or an ICT solution that would help manage flows of people to better self-distance themselves. So this could be through a mobile application service. This could be, for example, through a booking service to further help with the social distancing problem that we have under the COVID-19 situation, for example. So there's an opportunity already in there. And your competitive advantage, which is anything related to what you are bringing to the market compared to what other competitors have. It could be on a price level, it could be on a technology level, it could be anything which gives you an advantage. Time, anything related to ease of use. So these are especially important to identify as your competitive advantage. Then you would stress here, again, executive summary, just one page, your company strategy. So how this falls in line with your actual company strategy and your actual objectives of the company. You define customers who will be buying or using your service, the market size, and the business model. So how are you going to be developing the business model? So really, this section is putting everything together. The introduction is all of the impact, excellence, and implementation put into one page. So if you would like, it might be even easier for you to actually do this section after you've actually completed the other sections, because you are able to better put things on paper in one page, clearly identifying what your product or service is doing. So use that tip of the following structure. It's very important, but clearly identify what is the problem solution and what is the value proposition as well. I'll go straight into the excellence. Excellence, as we said, is here we're showing and our innovation, both on the technical aspect and on other aspects that are considered to be innovative. So innovation is, of course, not technical. It's also on the other practical side of things as well. So in the excellence session, you will have a number of questions. So the first question they'll be asking you is the idea and solution. So here you need to discuss the product technology that you have. So you can discuss things related to your technology, if it's using specific technologies such as artificial intelligence, or if you're discussing the product as a whole as well, what product and service you are describing. Here you have to identify why you are introducing this project. Why is it a must-have? I think that's the most simple way of understanding this, is why do customers need this? And customers might need it because there isn't an alternative, and you are providing an alternative right now. And then that comes into how you are addressing EU policies. Now, this is interesting and very important to address within the idea and the solution, is that, for example, if you are doing something related to, for example, carbon capture, I'm taking a very extreme example, an extreme technology here, but it's on the cutting edge of technology using carbon capture technologies. That is obviously addressing very important EU policies, and as well as the SDG, UN SDGs, the 17 UN SDGs, for example. So just show to the evaluator that you are addressing those EU policies and that you are actually not doing something completely without kind of an understanding of the whole EU context, and also with regards to the global context as well. And of course, the potential to disrupt the market. Here, technically speaking, it's about how your product is going to change, potentially even incrementally or radically, the market. The innovativeness is here. I wouldn't stress too much about your competitors. This is not the section about identifying your competitors. It will be in another section. But do explain your competitive edge. And as I explained, it could be on price, it could be on the technicalities, it could be on your efficiency, it could be on other different aspects. It could be anything related to how you differentiate yourself from competitors and substitute solutions. So if you're introducing, for example, a car sharing app, you are providing something completely different. It might not exist on the market. Of course, a lot of these apps exist right now, but you might bring something completely new and different, even in the way of approaching the same subject. So explain this competitive edge. The tip here is trying not to be too technical. Evaluators are, even though, so again, as I was mentioning to you, you are going to be selecting the keywords, and that will allocate your proposal to the evaluator, but your evaluator might not be from exactly that field. So if you're going to go into very technical terms with regards to artificial intelligence or IoT, anything, I wouldn't go into too much technical analysis here, because these technical terms might distract them. Now, I mentioned technology readiness level. So a question here will be, they will be asking you, what is the stage of the development of your proposal? You have to prove that you have reached technology readiness level 5. Now, I've put an image there, which is very useful, which shows you the various levels of technology readiness. So again, you don't have to be at a late stage with your product or service. The minimum, however, is technology readiness level 5, which technically means that you've built that prototype, you've built the technology and you build the platform, whatever you see, and basically you've already tested it with, for example, customers or a subset of customers. You have to demonstrate that. You can demonstrate that in however form you would like to demonstrate it. So it's, for example, I've put my app on the App Store, or I've had customers for my small hydro project, which is extremely innovative, and the Council of Cambridge has bought it and used it. So there needs to be some sort of validation of the technology that you've used. At the same time, you need to demonstrate how you're going to obtain technology readiness level 8. So you need to show specifically how you're going to obtain not only technology readiness level 8, but also how you're going to scale up your innovation to the market, which is technology readiness level 9. Now, I've put a tip under here, is that if you do not request blended financing, as I mentioned before, it is optional, but highly recommended. You will need to state how you plan to finance the additional steps towards commercialization. Really here is that the Commission is looking for projects that push products to go abroad. We're not talking about local companies here in Malta that want to stay in the local market. Yes, of course, you start at the local market, but within the application, you need to show that you are going to foreign markets. And the way of going to foreign markets is, of course, you need finance, and you need to show how you do that. So it can either be through the Eic Fund or the Eic equity option, or through private investors that you have already attracted. So you need to show this and explain this very briefly. Now, the technological, practical, and economic feasibility. Here you need to explain your market. Explain the market size and understand how big this market is that you are entering. Here really it's in relation to the feasibility study that you've already carried out before. So it is highly recommended that you have already done a market study. I really do not recommend companies, entities going into the Eic Accelerator without having done the technological, practical, and economic feasibility. There are a lot of funds, even provided by MCSG, on understanding your market and market studies and business plan development. So if you haven't done this, it's extremely important because this essentially is mandatory within the Eic Accelerator. So having that information, you are going to explain the market and all the information that you've collected in your market feasibility study. I'm going to talk about the non-bankability, which is basically safe to say it's just a way of showing that you have not been able to finance or reach that amount of finance in order to scale up yet. So you are at that stage that you are a risky project and not many investors have invested in your product or technology, but obviously you have a lot of potential to go. So track record as well in terms of, the kind of the financing that you've achieved, if you've done seed finance or received any other external finance, it's extremely important to mention that as well. And I'm going to soon finish with my section, which is the last section, which is the impact. Impact, as I mentioned in the slide previously, is really talking about who is going to develop or buy your product. So again, here you're going to clearly define who is the market, who are your customers, and what is the market. If you're the market, meaning if you're in hospitality industry and you've done something that is in the hospitality industry, define the hospitality market industry. Very simple. How big is the hospitality industry? How big is the software market for the hospitality industry? How much will it grow by? Is there any growth in software in the hospitality industry? Now, take a very interesting example of the COVID crisis. If I were to develop something related to the software, or if I were to develop something innovative in the hospitality industry or the tourism industry right now, I don't think a lot of evaluators would be looking very well upon the fact that the market is probably going to decrease in the next 2 or 3 years because of COVID-19. So the fact that the market will increase, will enlarge itself, and subsectors of that market will increase is something that you have to show to evaluators as well. You have to identify the user needs and markets. So again, I'll take the hospitality industry as well. You've invented a new keyless system of entry for hotels. That's a need. You've identified it. You've seen that it's growing market, and therefore there is a need for your product. Willingness to pay, very important as well. People are willing to pay for your product. You've carried out surveys. You've carried out understanding of the market. You show that people are ready to pay for your product. I'm going to stress this point, which is the letters of support. If you are able to prove that customers are willing to buy your product, what is the best way of supporting that? The best way of supporting that is through letters of support. I'll take the example of a keyless entry system for hotels. Actually, we have a company in Malta who's actually developing this. If I have a letter of support from the Marriott Hotel or from another big hotel industry, we've invented something completely new and technological for the hotel industry, and I have a letter of support from one of the big hotel chains, that is viewed very positively. So letters of support is extremely important. The letters themselves are included in the annexes, and I will go through that very briefly very soon. And last but not least, the in-depth competitor analysis. Here, quite simply, you need to identify who your competitors are and also show what advantages you bring compared to your competitors. And generally speaking, again, with a lot of the proposals here, of course, we really highly recommend putting in any visual artifacts, graphs, especially, for example, in the market type and sizing, you really show graphs, pie charts, so on and so forth. For competitor analysis, you can do a very simple table showing your product, what you offer that your competitors do not offer. It's very important here to identify competitors, not just direct competitors, but indirect competitors as well. So you might believe to not find competitors, but there are always competitors. So do not fall into the trap by saying that you do not have competitors, because no one will believe you, and it's literally impossible. Competitors are usually there. They might not be direct competitors, they might be indirect competitors, and they all fight in the same market. So always analyze who your competitors are. Commercialization strategies. As I mentioned to you, the key factor of the Eic Accelerator is how you plan to scale up and how you plan to sell your product. So you have to have a very clear commercialization strategy. I've put a little image here on the left-hand side, which is the business model canvas. This is very useful for you to develop, first of all, your business model and to understand your business model and how you plan to commercialize your product or service. So use the business model canvas. Use that, or highly recommend to use that to explain your business model, how it fits in with your company strategy, and how you're going to get external strategic partners. So, for example, if I am I'm producing something in the medical device industry, I need to obviously commercialize that. And who are going to be my external strategic partners? Well, quite simply, my strategic partners are going to be the wholesalers and distributors of medical equipment. So if you have those strategic partners that will help you commercialize your product, mention them in your proposal as well. You need to have a very clear identifying who the players are. Don't be wish-washy about saying, we're going to be commercializing this and scaling up with distributors. Name those distributors. I really want to see evidence. Who are your distributors? Who are your partners helping you commercialize your product? And last but not least, of course, communication and the marketing strategy. So the impact here is really, the tip here is make your proposal business-oriented, focusing on the market potential of your innovation. Impact, another thing under impact is the IPR. Quite simply here, if you have any IP, some companies have a lot of IP, some of them don't, depending on their innovation or product. If you do, please mention them. Please enter what kind of IP strategy you have. What is the status of your intellectual property? If you're going to have any kind of co-ownership or licensing agreement. So as I was mentioning to you in the business model canvas, you might, for example, you've created a way to develop pesticides, a very innovative way of using pesticides, and you might want to, instead of go all out on the product and market it yourself, you might want to license this to Monsanto, for example. So this needs to be shown and needs to be approved within your proposal. Again, the scale-up potential here is very important. If you are scaling up, it's quite simple. It means that you are going into new markets. So please name those new markets. Name who your partners are in the different countries, distributors in different countries, companies in different countries. And of course, if you're going to scale up, you might want to increase your personnel. So put that into account. And if you do want to increase your personnel, mention why and how they will support your scale-up potential. And another thing is, of course, the key performance indicators. It's quite interesting here. Just generally speaking, you just will state what your KPIs are for the project. So obviously in terms of technology, the practical side, economic, and the market. Include financial needs is the tip. Include financial needs in order to scale up the company. So not just, you will, in order to scale up, of course, you will need to identify how much you will need to scale up. And of course, the equity part is very important here to show if you intend to use the equity there. Lastly, of course, here is to look at the impact in terms of the societal, environmental, and the EU policy, as I mentioned before. Lastly is the implementation, and I'm nearly finished, just 2 minutes and we're done. Team and capabilities. I will stress this as one of the most important things within the application. It is basically useless to have a great project and a great idea without the team to manage it. So I've put a tip down there. Please, no one-man shows. If you are a company, just one person, the proposal will absolutely fall on its face. There is no way you can implement a high-growth project with a one-person, one-man show. And it's quite funny because it's something that sometimes we identify, especially with a lot of applicants that we hear from other countries. They sort of present themselves, and then it's just one person actually doing all of this. So please avoid that. And the reason for that is that, think of it this way: if you are going to scale up, how are you going to scale up? No one person can do everything within a company. It's literally impossible unless you're Elon Musk. But no one is Elon Musk today. So let's not stay with that function of Elon Musk right now. So your management really should reflect your project. So if you're going to scale up, for example, you're going to have marketing people. If you're going to do a lot of R&D, you're going to have scientific personnel. If you're going to do anything, for example, in logistics, you're going to have logistical person. So match your capabilities with your project. And of course, look into the management structure. Financing needs, this is important, is the implementation, estimating the total amount of financing that you need, estimate how much you need and why you need it, and whether or not you have investors. So as I was mentioning here before, the investors play a positive role also in your proposal, but you have to mention them. You might have seed investments, you might have acquired some seed funding before, you might have some angel investor, but of course that is not necessarily enough. And this is the reason why you need the extra financing. So explain how much you need, why you need it, and estimate the total amount of financing. And of course, describe the equity component of your proposal if you are requesting it. Just a tip here as well, apart from the one-man shows, if you do not have the competencies right now, show how you're going to acquire those competencies. So you might want to acquire them through, again, recruiting personnel, potentially, but also through partnerships with other companies and subcontracting as well. So just show how you're going to cover what you are going to cover in your project. Again, under implementation, you're going to have your work packages. So before I go into the work packages, clearly the need for EIC support has to be defined. Define whether or not you're going to go for grant or blended finance, and why you need EIC financing. Of course, if you are a company that has a lot of investors, private investors, you're about to scale up, you might not really need the EIC financing. So why do you need EIC financing? You need to really specify what is the situation. For Malta, for example, if you are looking into equity, and the local equity market here in Malta is obviously a very good reason why you would want equity finance from the EIC Council. So explain that also in terms of your non-bankability. What we mean by non-bankability is that you are a company that finds it hard to get enough investment, not investment, but enough investment to scale your ideas. So again, you don't need to show anything in particular, but you might need to specify what you've done so far to acquire financing and why you have not raised the funds. Again, risks, the mitigation measures, and so that means the opportunities, the risks that you will encounter, identify them. So there might be regulatory risks. You might have risks, political risks, potentially, depending if you're, for example, going into emerging markets or emerging economies. So identify specific risks that you might encounter and how you will mitigate those risks. The approach, very simply, a Gantt chart. You need to really specify the way that the procedure, like what you're going to do in the first couple of months, what activities, and this will be closely in relation to the work packages, which I will go through right now. The Gantt chart just shows what you are going to do when, providing a realistic time frame as well, and the resources that you will employ during that time period. Last but not least, the work package. The work packages, I don't recommend doing more than 5 work packages, I think, between 5 or 6 work packages, but basically each work package is demonstrating what you're going to do. So if you're going to have a work package on research and development, that is one work package. You might have different work packages depending on how you're going to build your project. So you might have another work package on the commercialization strategy, on the marketing strategy. So divide your work packages according to what you need, demonstrating that, for example, the TRL will increase in that work package. So if you're going to have a research and development work package, you are going to increase your TRL level because of the investment that you will have in the work package. Do not combine equity and grants in the same work package. So if I'm going to be doing a commercialization marketing approach, scaling up my innovation abroad, most likely I would be using equity. Do not combine the two things, and specifically state what kind of financing that you're going to be using. Lastly, and then I will very quickly go to Angelle, who has just entered the webinar. I'm very happy that she's here. The annexes here. So all I've just explained right now is in 30 pages. The annexes is an opportunity for you to bring in supporting evidence. Firstly, the security and ethics. Don't skip this part because it's very important. The CVs are very important. You have to provide the resumes of all the team members. So this shows who are your key partners and who is on your team. And try and be as diverse as possible. As I just mentioned to you, it's not good to have team members that are not diverse in their capabilities. Then there is the others section. Here, put in letters of intent. We really highly recommend putting in letters of intent from key commercial strategic partners if available. So the letters of intent, you can put them in the annexes, as I mentioned to you here. Lastly is the annex on financial and corporate information. I will not go into too much detail here because it is very technical in terms of the accounting requirements. So we do recommend going through a financial advisor potentially to go through this annex here, because we will provide all of your financial information, the profit and loss statement, balance account, cash flow analysis as well. And this has to be all in line and consistent with the information that you've provided within the other section, so your business model, and timeline and so on and so forth. That is it from my end. I will now pass on the mantle to Angelle, who has kindly volunteered to be part of this webinar today. I'm very happy and glad that she's here. I will pass on the microphone to you, Angelle. So thank you so much for joining. And if you guys, again, if you have any other questions on what we have discussed, we can maybe discuss it towards the end of Angelle's presentation. So thanks a lot. Angelle, can you hear me?
Yes, Stephen, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Great to have you.
Welcome.
Do you need to present something, or would you just like to? Okay, perfect.
Yes, I would like to present something, and I would like to know how many SMEs and from which sectors we have in the room.
Yes, well, the Menti unfortunately didn't really work very well this morning, but we can give a shot and ask people if you want in the chat box. I think we can give a try.
Yeah, because I see a lot of familiar names, which means a lot of nice people and colleagues at MCST. Hello, everyone. But I'd like to know which sectors we have for SMEs, so that when I present, I can sort of, go for tips from those angles.
Yeah. So if you guys can please comment in the chat box, just maybe stating from which sector you are from.
And please tell me, Steve, if you see the presentation on
Yes, I do.
On my other monitor. Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
We have someone's working in artificial intelligence.
Okay. AI, good.
I don't know if there's anyone else who would like to contribute. Maybe not.
But do we have other companies in the room, or are there consultants? I don't know.
I think.
You know me. I need to know my audience. Know me.
Yes, I agree with you, but
the rest are a bit friends and family.
Yes. I know there are a couple of people in here that are from the university as well. I think some people are from the university.
Okay.
I'm not so sure if there are any companies today, but if you are a company, just maybe write it in the chat box. But so far I don't see anyone.
Okay, no problem. So hello everyone. Even if there are no companies, well, this also helps. Also, Steve and the other colleagues at MCST get sort of a little bit of an insight of what happens when we get to jury level. So imagine you've done everything that Steve has told you. You've created the perfect proposal in time, by the deadline, and you sent it in. What happens next? So basically, last round, we had about 4,000 proposals that were submitted. This was the cutoff in March, actually. So now, actually, no, there was the Green Deal. I don't know how many are there for the Green Deal, but in March, we had 4,000. That was the COVID call. And out of those 4,000, the first thing that happened to every one of those is that there are 4 expert evaluators per proposal, which look at it mostly from a technical perspective. And this means that the 4 of them read it on their own without discussing with each other, and they give a mark, okay, to the 3 sections. So the sections of excellence, impact, and implementation. Once that happens, an average is calculated, okay, and a ranking list is built where the top 200 of that rank actually get invited for interviews. And this is the part where myself and all the other jury members come in. So who are the jury members? Okay, we are either experienced investors, entrepreneurs, VCs, business angels, and there are also some people that come sort of from development agencies, sort of like Malta Enterprise in Malta, kind of, but those that in other countries also do investments in companies. And here the interview, let me go, sorry, to this. So this is how an interview is organized, and this is the updated version as per post-COVID situation. So at the moment, interviews are being done like this on WebEx, and this is how it happens. So the first 10 minutes, the jury members, out of which there should be at least 5, most of the times we are 6, we sit there and we listen. And the company has to present to us in 10 minutes sharp, okay? We actually stop people that go beyond 10 minutes, okay? Their pitch. So I don't know, Steve, if you're still going to explain to them that they need to send in a pitch deck with the proposal.
Yeah, no, I mentioned it. Yes, I did.
Yes, but the thing is that pitch deck is set in stone. You cannot change it once you submit, okay? So normally about a month and a half has passed, or maybe even 2 months by the time they come to us, but we can only see the pitch deck that you submitted with the proposal. So if great things have happened in the meantime, you can only tell us verbally, but we have to see the original pitch deck, okay? So that 10 minutes, okay, normally there are 2 or 3 people from the company presenting. Now, in my opinion, whenever a company only sends 1 person, it doesn't give a great opinion. Why? Because as you will see later on, one of the great sections to actually give marks on is the team. So if we cannot see the team because only 1 person goes there, then you're not going to score greatly in that one, even though in your pitch deck you might have a lot of nice faces and photos, okay? So showing the team in the briefing is very important. The briefing can be done by 1 person, maybe the CEO, and the others don't speak. However, then in the second part, when we get to the question and the answer, it is extremely important that everyone participates. So I've seen a lot of pitches where only 1 person talks and the others are clearly window dressing. And I hate to say this, but normally it is a man which talks and the window dressing is female. So don't do that, okay? That you get an instant kaput from our side. So over there, so after the 10 minutes, then we have 40 minutes, sorry, then there is 30 minutes Q&A with no predefined question from the jury members. So the 30 minutes, I don't know why here it's 40, but it's actually 30. It's 30 minutes. Okay, so the 30 minutes Q&A is like a grilling, and you are expected to be fast, to be concise, and to be truthful. And this, I mean that if some of you are thinking of taking a consultant with you that have helped you to write the proposal, don't do that. Because we want to see the company. We do not want to see the consultant. We need to find a European unicorn. This is what we are there for. So if you are there just, to push the buck forward 5 meters, don't come to us, go to your bank. And in the grilling, we ask particularly tough questions, which unless you've never been grilled by like a VC or an investor, you might not even understand what it is we are asking you. So I took some notes here to explain to you maybe some of the terms you will hear. So, for example, one of the things we always ask people is, tell us about your ESOP. Now, you might tell me, what is an ESOP? You might never have heard this term. It's an employee stock options plan. So basically, how are you motivating the management and the employees to actually give you great, motivation and energy and push in the company? So those, let's call them traditional family businesses that keep all the money for their own and keep the shareholding on their own and never give anything to the management or to the employees are not going to score very well here. Okay, so let's make that also very clear. Then something else which we will ask you is define your cap table. Okay, your cap table is the shareholding. Now, if you as the CEO or as the COO or whatever are not able to define the cap table, make sure that one of the people you take with you to the pitch is a financial person, because you will get grilled of sort of what was the valuation of your company at the point where that investor came in, and what was the pre-money, post-money valuation, and all of these terms which you can't say, I don't understand this, okay? Sort of, you just have to fire the answers. So that wonderful 30 minutes grilling is normally not so much to ask on the product, but to ask on the vision. So the vision and the implementation and the team and how this company wants to become a European unicorn, okay? So again, if your ambition isn't high, don't go for it. Gender, again, I've already mentioned we don't like window dressing, but what we also don't like is an all one gender routine, which again, so far we've only seen, no, actually once I think we saw an all-female company, but normally it's an all-male company, and that is another no-no. And not just gender, but ethnicities and different diversity, okay? So that you're going to be asked about it, and don't tell us rubbish like, oh, we couldn't find any women that are experts in AI, for example, just talking to the AI person, okay? Because that's a big no-no as well. So after those 30 minutes, the company goes out, and then as jury members, we have 25 minutes to decide. So we decide by basically voting A or B. A, they get the money, B, they don't get the money. And basically, it will be based on the materials that you have submitted, which we would have read before the pitch, but most importantly, on the pitch and on the answers and on how you answered. Because, for example, going around in circles in your answer is going to not make you very popular. Focusing your company on 2 or 3 different products without a clear go-to-market strategy is not going to help you out. Not disrupting the market is not going to be good for you either. So over there, and the decision is not normally a simple majority. So as jury members, we normally fight passionately pro and con why this company should or should not get the funding. So my next one is then 16. So yes, so how is the decision made? So the evaluation is a collective exercise involving all jury members. The report that we write as jury members, which then ends up on your desk, underlines the strengths and weaknesses of the project. So even if you don't make it, you get what is called an ESR, an evaluation summary report, which can help you to understand where you did wrongly. Okay, the rest is internal. This is part of our briefing, okay? So the criteria. The criteria that is given to us as jury members to select the best company. So The first one is implementation, the team. I already told you about this, extremely important. So, are the team, you know, a good blend? Do they have the capability and motivation to implement the innovation proposal and bring it to market? So if your 3 people are 3 scientists, this is not going to help. So we need a balance between technical and entrepreneurial and financial and go-to-market abilities, okay? It can't be one-sided. It's also not good, because we've seen it and also, you know, decided to say no, that you are all like business development and marketing and sales people without any technical expertise, because that means, again, that there is an imbalance. Then, are you non-bankable? And this issue of non-bankability is a big headache for all jury members, because if you go anywhere else in the internet and define non-bankability, it doesn't mean the same way like the European Commission defines it here. So like Steve said before, I've heard that bit, Steve, you said well that you are not able to raise enough money and quickly enough also to be able to get the opportunity. Or, for example, that you are so, maybe you're in the medical sector and therefore it's going to take you years and years to make a profit, that your current investors do not want to invest anymore at the moment. It doesn't mean you're not investable, but they've reached the end of the pocket, you know? And you have to really argue your way through. So the moment that we smell that someone is able to raise money on their own, bye-bye, you get a B. Then impact, the commercial strategy. So are the business model and commercialization strategy well thought through? Again, we've seen a lot of models and they bring us the usual Osterwalder model and they cannot explain it in simple English. Okay, so it needs to be clear, the strategy, how you're going to move forward and your go-to-market. How sound are your financial planning and projections? So you need to show what we call a hockey stick in your numbers. So you need to go basically from doing losses to then break even, to then profits, and then exponential profits. If your profit graph, let's put it this way, is just going to be like this and not like that at the end, again, you are not a unicorn potential. You're a nice company to have, yes, but this is not the program for you. So really, this is really important. And again, you will get grilled on this. Do you have the potential to scale up? How big can you get? And are the financial needs to ensure company success clearly identified? So let's assume that in year 5 post-project, you tell us that you're going to do 80 million of revenues. Okay, we're going to ask you, what are you basing those 80 million on? Argue it for us. Explain it to us. Third is this excellence point, which is kind of the actual product. That's the innovation through its degree of novelty or disruptiveness have the potential to create a new market or significantly impact existing ones. So again, you need to be disruptive. If you are an incremental innovation, no. It needs to be a disruptive innovation, whether you're disrupting the product or the market. And is the timing right for this innovation? Is the market ready? Because maybe, yes, you have this great product idea, but no one needs it yet, you know? So there needs to be a balance of why the timing needs to be now. My last one is a sort of summary. And basically, so what is the jury looking for? Okay, so the jury is looking for individual SMEs with high risk, high growth potential, groundbreaking concepts at the last stage before scale up, and radical market creating innovation. So that was it from me, Steve. I don't know if you or the others have any questions.
Thank you so much, Angelle. It was very, very insightful, I think, especially from the jury point of view. I think it's very useful to have your input, so I thank you so much for that. I will wait just a couple of minutes. If anyone has any question, feel free to write in the chat box or even unmute your microphone. Don't feel too shy to speak out. If there's anyone who would like to, oh, okay, there is a question, I think.
Yes. Okay. Can I stop sharing so I see the whole?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Let me.
Think,
how do you do that?
I think we'll do that. We'll do that. Hang on a second.
Okay.
Let me just ask Mark if he can do that. Where is Mark? Okay. If Mark, can you try and, oh, I'll share my screen. Maybe it's probably easier at this point. Okay, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we have a question. I think it's from Frankie. I don't know if you can see it.
Yes. So, is the equity demanded for the proposed product or the company? So the equity is demanded for the company, but it is very clear that this product that you are presented needs to be, you know, the spearhead of the company. If it is like a sideline new product, which you're like testing the waters with, it's not ideal. Can you elaborate how equity is included in the requested budget? Okay, so in the application, you can tick that you either want grant and equity or else what is called grant with consent. Grant with equity means that you can take up to 2.5 million of grant, and that is just given. And then equity, you can request, for example, an additional 5 million. Then when you're creating the work packages, like Steve very well said, you should very clearly have work packages, which are the go-to-market commercialization work packages. Those can only be with equity. If you are requesting grant only and you have TRL 9 activities, those will be struck off. Okay, so when you make the application, it will be very clear in the application, the budget section, how much grant you are requesting, how much equity you are requesting. Now, if you go with the grant with consent, you can say, I apply for the grant only, the maximum 2.5 million, but I consent if the jury wants to give me more. And this has happened. We have sometimes said, you know what, they're underestimating the amount of money they need. They need another couple of millions to actually get there. And we actually have the power to assign additional money. Or they ask for 2.5 grant. We see that some of what they've asked is commercial, and we merge, we change actually, so that then it becomes maybe one of the work packages. Let's keep it simple, was 500,000, and that was commercialization. So then we go back and say, no, change the 2.5 grant to 2 grants and 500,000 equity. So I hope I've answered your question. Is there a minimum age of the company for the application? No, you can be a startup. But if you are a startup, then you really need serial entrepreneurs on board. So if you are all newbies, you are not going to pass the team criteria. Because like I told you, the team criteria has to show experience. And it's not enough to have people as advisors. It's not enough to have consultants. You need to have shareholders. You need to have owners that are experienced either entrepreneurs or investors. So my thought is that we are a group of companies, would it be possible to create a startup around the product? You can create a startup around the product, but as a group of companies, do you still fit into the SME definition? Because if the startup will be completely owned by the group of companies, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, I think, is it 50 million, the balance sheet of an SME? I'll find it soon in a second.
Yeah, it's around, I think it's a maximum. Can you hear me? I don't know if I'm on.
Yes, I do.
It's around 50, yeah, I think it's around 50 million. I think there is a specific definition for the SME, but I think it's around 50 million.
Yeah, so if you're a group of companies, which I don't know which one it is, but if it's one of the biggest group of companies in Malta, those are not seen as SMEs by the EU definition, and therefore your startup cannot apply. Because equity in the company is not an option for us. Well, you can apply for the grant only, but you will be grilled why you don't want equity. Because the whole idea here, this is, I think, the first program that we've seen of the European Commission where finally the EU is taking an active role in companies. So, Frankie, do you have any more questions? Or anybody else, huh? Sorry.
Yeah. I think what you mentioned before, it's very interesting. And first, I think the issue that you were mentioning, Angelle, about non-bankability, which is kind of a bit of, and you've explained it, I think, quite well. And the fact that, who can apply. I mean, from my experience, we get sorts of people coming in, they're young companies or they're young startups, and they don't really have that kind of experience. So it's not clearly, I don't think, as you rightly mentioned, there isn't that limit to what kind of company can apply, like how young the company can be. It can be very young. But because again, in terms of the regulations, any company can apply, regardless of the age. But I think you explained it very well on what it means to apply as a company, regardless of your age. I have a question for you, Angelle, regarding just the pitch. How detailed, for example, when you are explaining either the financial information or even the technical information, how detailed should you be? Especially when it comes to like financial issues, balance sheets and things like that. Like, do you need to go into a lot of detail, and is that good? Is that positive in a sense to go in a very technical financial detail, or should it be kind of an overview in your opinion?
Okay, so you know that there is the Excel that they also have to fill in.
Yeah.
Yes. So the Excel basically asks you basic questions like define your revenues in the past and in the future, define your profits and sort of your balance sheet at a high level. Those, you can take the hint from that, make it look a little bit bigger and nicer, and take it to the pitch. But then what's important is that you have a graph. Believe you me, you need to show this hockey stick. And I hope you're understanding me, Steve, when I say a hockey stick, what I mean, like a very good. So your numbers need to reflect that shape, and the best way of reflecting them is actually showing it in a graph.
Yeah.
So you don't need to be very detailed in the pitch, but you can be asked. So for example, if you see that there is a revenue of 10 million, but then only a profit of 500,000, you're going to get asked, explain to us the 9.5 million operational costs that you have here. What are they made up of? And then you are expected to know on the fly without looking at papers. This much is wages, this much is materials, this much is admin. Okay? So study your numbers before.
Study your number. Very good advice. I don't know if there are any other questions from the audience. I will just check the chat box if there's anyone, but I don't see anything at the moment. I don't think so, no. I will just check one last time. Hang on a second. I think that's it in terms of questions. Okay. I don't know if they can reach out to you, Angelle, if they have any other questions, but I think, I mean, you've been quite
they can reach out to you, and then you maybe collect them to me, because
exactly.
you know, technically I shouldn't talk to anyone. I mean, like, this is fine. Correct. Because I'm like mentoring, but I am a jury member and I will have to declare a lot of conflicts of interest. So I would prefer if they send to you, and then Stephen, you send me the questions without the names, without the details.
Okay, that makes sense.
If you don't mind, because
no, I agree with you completely. In fact,
I cannot be jury member anymore otherwise.
No, I agree with. Okay, that's very clear. Okay, thanks, Angelle, for that. I will close off the presentation. Really, thank you for your advice. I think it was very useful and insightful to have your feedback and output on this. Really appreciate it. So just to close off, as Angelle rightly said, you can contact me. I'm going to share with you my contact details right now, which you will see right over here. Feel free. Oh, I didn't go there. Why didn't it do that? That didn't work. Yes. Well, my contact details are here. If anyone can see the screen, I hope you can. Thank you so much. Just pop me an email if you have any other additional questions, and we can try and help you out. I'd also like to point out that we also have a scheme for any interested applicants to apply, which is the IPAS Plus. This is a scheme that MCST is offering to applicants in order to help you draft your proposal. So if you're interested and you need help in drafting your proposal, we're here to help. We can look at your proposal and review your proposal. And at the same time, we're also offering a grant where we've just launched it. It's a €5,000 grant, which will help you to develop your proposal to then submit to the EIC. So thank you all. Thank you so much for your participation. And wish you all a great day. Thank you again, Angelle, for your participation as well. Really appreciate it. And this recording will be available. The slides will be available, and we'll see you at the next webinar happening next week at the same time. Thanks, everyone, and have a nice day. Thank you.